Characters in the book in themselves are lazy, and the laziness from the characters comes directly from the author. Let me explain. It's really just villainy for the sake of villainy, and it just seems very nonsensical. The way Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Chi, and I am going to be telling you the worst books and or the most disappointing books that I read in 2024. There was a lot of them. I was able to narrow them down. A Sanctuary of the Shadow was a disappointment and was a bad book. And so this is what this is a book about. It's about a circus of fantasy characters. So basically in this world, there are the humans and there are also people who are kind of different types of mythological creatures. We have like seers, fortune tellers, we have just magicians, we have people who can be half animal. And the setting of this begins in a circus. So they work at a circus, so they entertain the humans. And the humans and the kind of magical creatures do not have like the best relations. So this is kind of the people who are in the circus way of just staying safe and also trying to maintain as good a relation they can with the humans as possible. So Harrow is a seer and she is the last seer. So her family, her entire family, the entire people of the seers were killed long ago, massacred long ago because of the squabble between the queens. And there are 4 queens here. 2 of the queens got into kind of just like sister relations, sister mess, and it led to the extinguishment of a whole race of magical people of the seers. So she is the last one, but because seers were so sought after, she has to remain hidden. And Salazar is the name of the man who runs the circle. So he's kind of her boss, and he's also the person who brought her in. So kind of not really a father figure, but kind of like a boss, a confidant, a friend. He brings in a creature and he thinks the creature is a wraith. And a wraith is the creature that is responsible for killing all of her people, all of Harrow's people. But she knows he is not a wraith because she can sense basically whether someone has killed before. She can sense pure evil. She senses none of that. So in her head, Salazar has brought in this creature. He's keeping the creature caged. He is abusing this creature because he believes that this creature is something that the creature isn't. So Harrow takes it upon herself, I must liberate this creature, right? And somehow a romance is supposed to come through between Harrow and this wraith creature. Here's the thing, none of that actually happens. There is just no building for this romance. It is insta-love so much. It was insta-love so much that I was like, oh, I didn't know this book was YA. And not to deem YA or like diminish the romance in YA, but insta-love is a very common young adult trope that I see a lot more in young adult books than I do in adult books. So because of the insta-love, I was like, oh, this is a YA book. I didn't know this was a YA book. That's completely fine. Then we go into, and there's a lot of non-young adult situations and young adult scenes happening in this book. So I'm like, this is definitely not YA. And if it's not YA, this author is just plain lazy and just not doing her job. This is actually not anything on the author, but just kind of the writing style of the author. I don't want to ding, and I don't know this woman from Adam, but I know her book. This book very much is lazy. It's just lazy is the perfect way to describe it, because the author or the characters in the book in themselves are lazy, and the laziness from the characters comes directly from the author. Let me explain. There would be a time where they're explaining the magic system, they're explaining the history, they're explaining how things have come to be, and one of the characters would just be like, but it's too much to explain right now. So a character will be explain something about the history of this conflict that led to the extinguishing of the seers, will explain something about the creatures, and the character would just be like, but that's too much for right now. Like not verbatim, but the character will be like, but you're too young to understand that. And then we'll just miss out on necessary world building in order for you to be invested in the villainy of one character, in the goodness of another character, in the truth of a character's upbringing. They will just be like, but you're too young to know about that, but we don't have time to get into that. And it is just the laziest writing I've ever seen. That happened so much in this book. And I was just like, but you need to explain, because you want me to believe, you want me to be invested in these characters, in their romance, in their history. And I am just not. And also Harrow, the character, is just very much written very young adult, very much written like a teenager. And I do not say that to be insulting. I mean, like, very much if I was a teenager, yeah, that would make sense to me. But I'm talking about like the way she's able to accept just the eradication of her own people, whether she is able to be face to face in some situations with the person who is responsible, eradication of her people, whether or not it's confirmed or not confirmed. She is just like, but it's okay. And I'm like, you are not a realistic character. You are now confronted with someone who is responsible for the entire eradication of your people, and yet you're just like, but it's fine because what? Because what? And then they will not explain it because we ain't got time for that, or you too old for that, or you too young for that, or And it's like, there is so much missing from this book. And I'm like, I can see how the story underneath could have been good. I can see that. That's why I don't know if this is going to be my last Aurora Asher book. If this is her debut novel, then it won't be. But if she's been writing for a minute and this is just another one of her novels, gosh, help us all. But yeah, just very, very lazy writing. And I feel like I felt like there could be a story that's coming to fruition, but it really was not, honestly. Like, there were so many good pockets. I feel like if we did expand, if the author did take the time to give us the background, to really explore these characters, really build on this relationship, and really build on kind of making us understand the conflicts of the plot that's happening, then it would be a good book. But it was just so lazy. It was just like, this is how it is, and just believe it, and know that there's some intricate background, but we're not going to tell you about that. Know that there's something deep rooted going on, but I can't say too much. Know that there is something crazy in the background, and this character's backstory, nuts. But I'm not gonna tell it to you because, we ain't got time. It just really made this book like, is this the synopsis of a really good book? Is this just kind of the, I don't know, the Wikipedia page of an actual book? Yeah, this was disappointing. And yeah, this was disappointing. The next books. I wish I could put a whole author on this list. But I am putting every book in, what is this series called? I'm going to call it the Neon God series because that's the first in the series. Every book in this series is going on my worst books of this year. I think I read 4, maybe 5 of them because I have all of them, because I love the covers, and because they're always buy one get one 50% off at Barnes & Noble. So it's all of that, all of those things coupled together with me having all these books and me never reading them, because after I read one of them 1 year or 2 years ago, I was like, I don't really like these aren't that good. I have a whole reading vlog on these books that I am going to post eventually, but just know they're not good. I don't like them. The world building is really shoddy. So this is basically about a city that is the equivalent of Olympus. I don't want to say the equivalent because it's not based on Greek mythology in the same way that it's like fantastical. These are just regular people. Like, this is just a regular city in your town, in my town. But they have rules. They're not governed by the same rules or the same ways that we are governed, like a governor, a mayor, a city council. No, they're governed by the 13, and the 13 make up kind of the 13 gods of Olympus. You have Athena, you have Hera, you have Zeus, you have Prometheus, you have Hermes. All of those people make up the governing council of the city of Olympus, but they don't have the same powers of these individuals because this is not a fantastical world. And it's just kind of machinations of these 13 and the people and the city that they live in. And it's just, honestly, the world building is very much not well done. It doesn't really make sense how there is kind of like a border around Olympus that makes that makes the people of Olympus different from every other city in the world. But it's not a magical border. This doesn't seem to be any way more technically, logically advanced in our current world. The characters all talk like everyone's a Disney villain, but it doesn't really make sense. It's not even talking about kind of like true like political villainy, like, I don't know, exploitation of the poor or just like proxy wars across the world. It's really just villainy for the sake of villainy. And it just seems very nonsensical. The way Katie Robert also describes people is hilarious to me. She will give no description outside of whether they're black, white, or Asian. Those are the only 3 races that have come to be fruition in these books. She'll be like, this is a beautiful black man. This is a beautiful white woman. She's a beautiful blonde woman. That's a beautiful Asian man. That's the only description she gives on the characters. And that started to grind my gears by the 4th book I read. So I have read all these books. I did not like any of them, to be completely honest. I think I gave them all 3 stars, but I could honestly go lower just because while I was reading them, I was like, this isn't horrible, but they're meant to be romances. The romances, you're supposed to just feed into the romances without it actually building, which is one of the romance tropes that I hate. I really need something to actually build instead of just coming on page 1 and be like, I've been in love with this person for 3 years. He's been in love with me for 5 years. We can't be together because we live in this fake villainous town. I don't like these books. I don't think I'm going to be reading Katie Robert anymore. I don't recommend. They were horrible. That was dramatic. This book I also did in the same reading vlog, reading books by authors I previously gave 1 star to, and this is 10 things that that never happened. I'm not gonna go too much into it because I talked about it in my reading vlog, but this book was not good. This book was not good. There was no romance. There was no chemistry. The author did not do their due diligence into building out a kind of relation between these 2 characters. So basically, this is about a man who is about to be fired, and his boss is about to fire him. He trips over in the department store that they work on. He trips over kind of one of the appliances, and he then gets amnesia, but he actually really doesn't get amnesia. The doctor says there's a possibility for amnesia. He runs with that. I forgot you fired me. I don't remember anything. And then in order to take care of him, the boss brings him to his house, and they are kind of in this forced proximity trope. He starts to learn about his boss, why his boss is the way he is, firing people, kind of mean, no one likes him, stoic. And we know nothing about this other main character until the last 3 pages. And you're supposed to believe in the romance. I don't. It doesn't make sense. There was no romance here. If anything, it was a found family. And even that wasn't, actually, that was pretty strong. But because it was supposed to be romance, I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense. And I was just waiting for it to hit, waiting for the author to build on the chemistry, build on the character relations, build on something, even build on just the background of one of the characters, because we got so much on the boss, kind of where he lives, his relationship with his parents, his relationship with his grandparents, his relationship with his employees, his past relationships. We got so much. And the employee with amnesia, we got nothing. So that was how this book went. And I was so disappointed. I don't know, because I love an amnesia trope. I don't know why, but it's so funny to me to like rebuild, because you have to really rebuild. You have to work to rebuild that chemistry from scratch. So you would even think that in a book like this, the chemistry would be stronger. Wrong. You would think wrong. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be controversial, but I'm gonna start with one that is objectively a good book. Let me set the scene. Like, this is a good book. It is written very, very well, amazingly heartbreaking, and it really made me dissect what my idea of like a good victim is, or if I have preconceived notions of what a good victim or what a victim should be, or how a victim should sound. And that is my Dark Vanessa. Listen, this book was disappointing. It's definitely not one of the worst books by any means. It is written so just heartbreaking is what People Magazine says, so they may have gotten something right for the first time ever, but it's written so heartbreaking. So this is a book that is written, it's written in singular perspective, but it's written from the perspective of a girl who was abused as a child. She was in I have no word to say except for a relationship with her teacher when she was a teenager, when she was 14, 15, and that kind of bleeded into her adult life in a very predatory manner, obviously. And then it's her as an adult when there's multiple allegations coming from other victims of this same teacher coming out. She's kind of at the center, or not at the center, because there was obviously a lot of rumors going around with her and whether or not she was abused by this teacher when she was younger. So people are kind of reaching out to her, like, would you also kind of want to submit your story in order to get this man convicted and behind bars? She, on the other hand, is of the mind that she was not abused. She does not feel like she was abused, because when they take you to the perspective, you are seeing that there are kind of the check marks that people have in their head for whether or not something is consensual, whether or not it's abuse. She feels like their relationship did not fit that bill, and she's to this day has a relationship or has kind of like communication with this man and does not feel that she was abused. And it kind of takes us to her as a child when she is kind of a victim of this man, and her as an adult who does not look back on what happened to her as a victimization, or does not see this man as a pedophile. This is probably the most uncomfortable book I've ever read. I would read something, put it down. And it's obviously not meant to be enjoyable, but it was just a very, very uncomfortable read, written so well. This book is written extremely, extremely well. My disappointment comes with this book is because of the way I kind of wanted it to go. It did not end in the way that I thought it would end for the victim and or for the perpetrator. And I think that it really made me think about kind of like how I expect victimhood when it comes to those who are victims of pedophilia, when it comes to those who are children who are victims of adult, how I expect kind of their perspective to be, and how society expects their perspective to be. Yeah, and how that kind of may be contradictory to the individual of the victim. So that's why it was disappointing to me. So I don't want to put this book here because it's a bad book, but I felt kind of let down and kind of disappointed. But that is not a telling on this book. It's more of a telling on kind of how I expected this book to be. I kind of wanted to be like, oh, good always wins, we will triumph, all of that. But it really was not the message that the author was sending. To go back to the synopsis, basically is told in the story of when she becomes kind of enthralled in what she believes to be this consensual relationship with this man who is 3 times her age, and kind of all of these steps that you see when her getting more kind of tied to this man, and then later how she is able to conceptualize what happened between her and this man as not anything of abuse, something that was consensual, something that she had agency in. But when you go back to the perspective of her as a child, you see how that was just not the case. You see how this is something that she could not consent to. It's interesting. It's kind of 3 perspectives. So you get her as a child, you get her as an adult looking back at what happened to her child, and you get you as a reader who has perspective into both of them, so you see how what happened to her was predatory, and you can see how also she can in her head want to make it so this was that she wasn't a victim, and also how she's able to come to the conclusion that she wasn't a victim. So yeah, this one is more on me. I wanted this to end in a way that like, oh, everyone gets their comeuppance, but this was a very realistic telling, too realistic for my liking. This is all together, I'm not gonna say a book I recommend, but a book that was beautifully written. I'm not angry that I read it. I'm not mad. I'm not disappointed that I read it. It just did not leave me in a good space. That's the best way to put it. This next book was disappointing, and I'm not gonna say that I did like this book. This is On Rotation, a novel. I like this book. There's many things I liked about this book, and I have a video with me and my best friend because we buddy read this, and we talk in nauseum about this book. So all I'm gonna say about this book, basically, it's about a girl who is in med school, and she is a first-generation Ghanaian immigrant, and she is the eldest daughter. So it gets into kind of a lot of like the eldest daughter in the African household. Word out to y'all, I see you. That responsibility. Also, she's in med school, her parents wanting her to be a certain person, her deciding whether or not she wants to be that person, and also her relationship with her body and her men and her with her body and men and her identity. So that's what it goes in. So we get this girl who's in med school, and we get also her relation with her family, and then we also get her relation with this specific character. I think his name is Ricky. Yeah, his name is Ricky. And Ricky and her meet. They have a really cute, but he's just like, oh, did you think I liked you? Oh, you thought I was feeling you? Yeah, that's pretty much what he does. But we see on page like, oh, you definitely were feeling her. And then they just kind of have this like tug and pull where you see kind of like their friendship, and whether or not it's going to turn to more, you don't know. And you also see the background of her and her relationship with her friends, her relationship with her family, and her relationship with her career path. And then there's Ricky. So I think a lot of parts of this book was good. The part that was disappointing was the romance. The romance disappointed me in a big way. I don't know what, I would like to know what the message the author was sending when she wrote this romance. That's all I want to know. I'm not going to spoil like how the romance ends, how the relationship ends, whether or not they end up together, how they end up, or any of that. But it was disappointing. It seemed like everything in this book, even the way she was building, the author was building the main character. So they're building, what's her name? Angela, when she's coming into her own with her career, she's coming into her own with her relation with her friends, with her coworkers, trying to really find her footing and how she wants to relate to her parents, really kind of setting boundaries with her parents when it comes to the decisions she makes on her own life. She's really coming into her own. And then when it comes to this boy, yeah, it's like, who are we dealing with two separate characters? Like, Angela, who are you? What are you doing? Like, I cannot relate to the decisions you are making. And it's kind of like the author, I don't know which way the author wanted us to go. I don't know if the author wanted us to be invested and to root for this relationship or to be against this relationship. I don't really know how it was, because for me, it seemed like it should have went the opposite way that it went in this book, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Besides that, it was a really good book. I enjoyed it. It was a fun read. It was really interesting to kind of see the perspectives of another first-generation West African girl and the kind of relation she has with her, that being the eldest daughter, and how she relates to her parents and things of that nature. That was very interesting. I definitely enjoyed that, especially with her like friend relations, which were really interesting. Definitely enjoyed that. The romance though, that was interesting. Those were my worst and most disappointing books. Not all of my most disappointing books were my worst books. Like, some were disappointing just because of my personal taste and how I like my books to end and wrap around in a little bow. But yeah, let me know if you've read any of these books, what you think of these authors, what you think of these books, if you think they deserve to be in this list. And I will talk to you guys later.